So we will be talking about lookup filters in this session. And what lookup filters do in Salesforce is that it allows you to relate specific records to each other. For example, we have this account name lookup field on contact object, and using specific filter, we can ensure that only specific accounts are related to contacts. Similarly, we can apply this to the relationship between custom objects, and we're going to be talking about this use case. Let's say management decided that only those students who have a valid driver license is allowed to drive a car at the university campus, right? So if the students enrolls into our college, and if they mention that they have a car, we also want to ensure that the college also wants to ensure that they have a valid driver's license. And as an admin, we could configure, one way to configure is that by creating a lookup filter. All right. We have this car and student custom objects. Let's go and verify that. Car, right? We have cars, and cars can be related to student, right? So currently, for any car record, we can select any student record, regardless of whether they have a valid driver license or not. But we only want to make sure that we select from this list, we select only those students who have a valid driver's license. But if we just tell users, hey users or agents, make sure you always select the student who have a valid driver license. We cannot just tell them or give them that instructions and hope that they will never do a mistake. Sometimes the agents can change, employees can come and leave. Sometimes they may accidentally select a student from this lookup field who may not have a valid driver license. So to avoid mistakes like that or to avoid bad data like that, we could implement lookup filters on this field. All right. So again, this field is located on the car object. So that means we have to go to car object and open this lookup filter and then configure that. But how do we know which student has a valid driver license? How do we know that? We have to have something to indicate that. So currently we don't have anything to indicate whether they have a valid driver license or not, right? So we don't have anything on the student record that talks about driver license. I'm searching for driver and nothing comes up. So for that reason, what we also need to do is we need to create a field on the student object to indicate whether they have a valid driver license or not. So let's go ahead and do that first. So I'll go to Object Manager and then Student. All right. And then I'll quickly create one field. And this field will be used to indicate whether they have valid driver license or not. So I'm going to go with checkbox field here and click Next. The name is going to be has valid driver license. Okay. Let's also provide some help text here. And we'll say if the student has a valid driver license, check this field or mark this field. Okay. And then click Next. Make this visible to these two profiles. Click Next. And then click Save. So let's go back to our student record and do a refresh. And has a valid driver license field is here. There's a help text, nice help text here that tells what we should do with this field or when we can check this field. Now it is time to set up that lookup filter. I'll go to the car object. Select it, and then select fields and relationship. Here we have this lookup field, right? This master detail lookup field. All right. And then click on this field. And here we don't have any filters defined yet. I'm going to click on edit. And here I will select on this show filter settings, and then I will configure a filter. So again, how it works is, let me go back to a car record, right? On this car record, we have this student lookup field, but the data type is master detail, okay? Between car and student, we have master detail relationship, and that master detail relationship field is just a lookup field. And on that field, we can configure a lookup filter. So don't think that just the name says that, just because the name says lookup filter, it doesn't mean it can only be applied to lookup relationship. It can be applied to master detail relationship as well, okay? All right, so let's go back to car. We're on the car object. We are on this student master detail field. And here we're going to configure the criteria. So it says optionally create a filter to limit the records available to users in the lookup field. Pay close attention. Salesforce now is calling this master detail field a lookup field. As I mentioned earlier, lookup field is an umbrella term for all those relationship fields, okay? So now I'm going to configure my filter. I'm going to say the student record, current lookup, okay? And from that student record, I'm selecting has a valid driver license field, and I'm selecting operator equals value, select this lookup field and choose true. Okay. So this filter tells us, allow students to be selected via this lookup field, if they have a valid driver license. True means if this box is checked on the student record, for example, let me go to the student record. If this box is checked on the student record, then allow them to be selected. That's what equals to true means. Okay. Now, when you start to configure this lookup field, you also have different options here that are confusing initially. You might be confused. Okay, what do we select here? Because the lookup filters can be configured in different ways. Let me clear this out first. For example, you have this car. You have this current record title, and under that you have a car. What does that mean? That means if I click this, then I will be able to select fields that are on the car object. For example, if my requirement was allow only US-made cars to be assigned to students, then I would have to select applicable field over here from the car object. We will include different more complex scenarios in the future to cover the scenarios, but I'm just letting you know for now. But in our scenario, I need to select field from the student object, and therefore I go to this current lookup that is referring to this student field which is the current lookup field, okay? Current lookup field. And then from that student object, I'm selecting this field because that's the field that will tell me if I can select a, a student with a valid driver license, okay? And then operator equals to value, select from here equals to true, and insert that. We have a lot of other configurations here too. Please don't worry about that. We're going to talk about them later. Make sure this active checkbox is selected, okay? Configure your filter. We have only one criteria here, and then we're going to select save. All right, and then we will go to our car record now. Okay, let's go to our car record. That's our student. From that student, we'll navigate to car record, okay? And then let's do a refresh here. Okay. And then let's try to create a new car record. Okay. We don't have to create a new car record, but I'm just choosing to create a new car record. Let's say Ford 350. Car manufacturer is Ford. I'm trying to select a student, but nothing pops up. I'm not able to select the existing students. But previously, from the previous sessions, as you remember, we used to be able to select existing student records. Now, why is that? Why I'm not able to select the existing students? That's because I don't have any student that has a driver license. So for example, if I go to my existing student records, students, and then check their driver license and see if they have a driver license or not. So I want to include that has valid driver license field here. Where is that? Has valid driver license, add that. And as you can see, none of them has a valid driver license. Let me update that field on this Johnny Cash student record. Let's say this is the only student who has a valid driver license, and save this, right? Now, for my car records, okay, for my car records, I'll be only select Johnny Cash as a student because only Johnny Cash has a valid driver license. The others do not have it. That's why they cannot have a car. Okay, they cannot drive the car because they don't have a valid driver license. Let me go to a cars record, a cars record, and then try to create a new car. And then you see from this option, we can only select Johnny Cash. All right, we can only select Johnny Cash. Let's give it a model. Domestic car model, Ford, and click save. Now, I'm going to go to existing car records, the other car records that we had, this one, for example. And let's say I want to relate this car to the other records, right? To the other students. Here also, I can only select Johnny Cash. Let me cancel out from here. This is the previous setup, okay? Previously, this car was related to a student, to this Mike Donnie, because at that time, we didn't have this lookup filter. But let's say later on, you are coming to this record and making some update. Let's say this is not GM 250, but GM 350, and you're trying to save this record. All right, so it allowed you to save this record. So here we have this option that says the user can remove the filter or enter other values that do not match the criteria. Because of this, we could keep that existing value. But there is an option in Salesforce that we can remove that option from the users as well. For example, if I go back here and we can remove this student and select Johnny Cash, but we also currently, for the existing records, we have an option to keep the existing values as they are, but for new records, this lookup filter will always be reinforced. But for existing records, we can still keep the values even though they don't match that lookup criteria. And that's because we have made it optional. In the future sessions, we're going to try the other options, which will make it required.